The Winnipeg General Strike was the name given to the numerous protests and worker strikes seen in Winnipeg shortly after the First World War. This strike was infamous for its level of sheer size and influence. But this raises the question, why was the Winnipeg General Strike so significant? Shortly after the First World War, as soldiers were returning home from the cruel scenes of trench warfare, the soldiers of Canada hoped for better working conditions and an increase in salaries. These ideas were hyped up due to the cruel reality of the trenches in France, so they thought they had deserved those privileges after fighting for so long. Unfortunately for the soldiers, they were only met with the same poor conditions, long hours, and small pay as they had prior to the outbreak of war. This did not sit well with the returning soldiers, as well as the other workers of Winnipeg who had to work under the same poor conditions. Fueled by anger for a better working environment, as well as the influence from socialists and unionists, led them to call on a general strike. This strike would consist of nearly 30,000 people, and was said to be so large that almost all production was completely stopped on the day they had started to protest. From May 15th to June 26, 1919, the workers of Winnipeg would protest for limited shift times, limited work days per week, and better pay. An event known as Bloody Saturday ensued on the 21st of June, where provincial police would crack down on the strike. The police would use clubs to disperse the crowds, as well as directly opening fire on the crowd of protesters, which resulted in many deaths. The government of Winnipeg as well as the government of Manitoba would receive an incredible amount of backlash from this event, and many would call for the resignation of the elected officials. This strike, having been influenced by socialists and unionists, was feared to have almost caused a revolt against the government, which was suspected to give the possibility of a communist revolution in the province of Manitoba. This protest would show the governments of Canada that reform was heavily needed, as the risk of socialist revolt was enough to scare them into negotiation. Many reforms would be made after, with a 5-day work week, safety laws, and an increase of power for unions. Many leaders of the strikes would go on to form the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, a political party that would gain provincial-wide traction, later joining with other parties to form the New Democratic Party, a federal political party now known simply as the NDP. This formation of the CCF would strengthen the labor movement across Canada, and would later influence many municipal, provincial, and federal elections. Unions would see a massive influx of membership afterwards, as unions were seen as the only way to defend against the unjust labor laws of the time. The government of Canada would later give protections to the unions, which would in turn give the unions more power than they already had. Even though this event was over 100 years old, its significance was shown throughout Canada as it would help the labor movement gain traction and later cultivate into the modern-day New Democratic Party of Canada.